Additionally, TCEQ has been installing new state-of-the-art long-term air quality monitors in high-impact areas. The TCEQ also recently completed phase 1 of its special inventory to determine the location, number, and type of emissions sources located at upstream and midstream oil and gas operations within the Barnett Shale Formation. The TCEQ has received special inventory data from companies that account for more than 99% of the 2009 production of the Barnett Shale Formation. Phase 2 of the special inventory is undergoing final tweaks will begin this summer. It will require data on actual emissions, emission sources, proximity to nearest off-site receptors, existing authorizations, and other information. The TCEQ's regional office in Fort Worth has added 7 new inspectors to respond to air monitoring complaints quickly. In most cases, responses to complaints are handled within a few hours of receiving the complaint. Using the gas-fired IR cameras and or handheld volatile organic compound samplers, about 550 sites have been surveyed since August 1st, 2009. More than 275 canister samples, as well as mobile, real-time automated gas chromatographs samples have been collected. So I guess further sampling on these sites show very low levels of emissions. And I guess my point is that through the TCEQ, and I'm giving you a state point of view because that's where I work. I work with TCEQ, I work with Railroad Commission in my committee. And I am one of the elected officials that is concerned greatly about the health and well-being of this state, but also the economic health and well-being of this state. And in my position, I have traveled back and forth from Washington, D.C., Austin, to the Capitol. And it is a concern of mine that when I'm in these capitals and some of the conversations that I overhear, there are those that say that they want to level the playing field between the states. That the only reason Texas has succeeded economically is because we cheated on our environmental responsibilities. But as you can see by what I just read to you, we have not. Matter of fact, we've gone farther. We've gone farther than other states have as far as the reduction of these important and these emissions that are the health and safety of our Texas population. So in your study, I hope that you will also be consulting with the Railroad Commission, with the TCEQ, with our office. It's certainly open to you if you choose to use our office in any form or fashion. But this is a goal. This is certainly a goal of all of ours to keep Texas moving forward, but also safely and also environmentally healthy. So thank you very much.
My name is Rich Varela. I represent the Texas Independent Producers and Royalty Association.
You might want to just pull that a little bit closer to you.
I want to applaud the EPA for facilitating these stakeholder input meetings and for the opportunity to present comments here today. TIPRA is a trade organization representing the interests of more than 2,100 independent oil and natural gas producers and royalty owners throughout Texas. Founded in 1946, we are one of the nation's oldest and largest associations of its kind. Our members range from small family-owned businesses to the largest publicly traded independent producers and mineral owners. Our members own and produce more than 85% of the natural gas and 7% of the oil within Texas. In 2009, Texas producers paid over $2 billion in oil and natural gas severance taxes, a tax no other energy source pays. They paid almost $800 million to Texas permanent school and university funds. The industry also provided roughly 12% of total Texas employment, which equates to about 1.3 million jobs. Additionally, they pay local property taxes to school districts, counties, and other taxing jurisdictions of about $2 billion a year. We also strive to be good stewards of the environment and are very sensitive to the health and safety concerns of the public. TIPRA understands that regulation is important in protecting health and the environment. Our members spend billions of dollars annually to protect our natural resources. We are not opposed to regulation. We are opposed to any regulation that is not based on factual information or scientifically proven data. Pursuit of accurate data should be paramount in implementing these regulations. We do agree that monitoring needs to be conducted to assure that air is always protected. Recently, EPA Region 6 requested that industry collaborate to develop a multi-state, county-by-county emissions inventory of oil and gas facilities. Oil and Gas Trade Association from Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Arizona, and Arkansas, rather, in a letter to Dr. Armendariz, agreed to a coordinated approach to develop such an industry inventory. I would like to briefly highlight a few key points of that letter to Dr. Armendariz. First, as you are aware, air quality in an area is affected by multiple sources. Therefore, any emission inventory that is developed should include all sources in the geographic area rather than just focusing on one industry entirely, such as the oil and gas industry. Second, we believe that the best vehicle for providing emissions inventory data is for each state association to work with their respective state regulatory agencies under the existing framework of the State Implementation Plan, or SIP. State agencies have a defined role in the SIP process and thus are the appropriate party to coordinate this effort. In our view, the state agencies are in the best position to determine how to coordinate and work together to provide the quality and consistency of data that the EPA seeks. Third, due to the cost-effective and most cost-effective and associated effort with this statewide inventory of oil and gas sources, we suggest that the most cost-effective and efficient way to proceed would be to perform an inventory of oil and gas emissions in the non-attainment areas or areas that are expected to be designated non-attainment under the 2010 ozone standard. Last, there are several points I'd like to make. We have requested that several parameters be adhered to in the development of the emissions inventory, including that the basic reporting unit is a statutory source as currently defined in the Clean Air Act and its implementing regulations. We should establish a report that is reasonably close in time to avoid a situation where records are no longer exist, or there have been no regulatory requirements to keep data. Data already submitted in a state emissions inventory may be resubmitted as previously calculated or as part of the new emissions inventory. Allow generally accepted modeling software and or emission factors to calculate fugitive emissions. There's no reason that industry, the regulatory agencies, and the affected communities do not work together harmoniously to preserve healthy air quality for citizens and at the same time encourage development of plentiful supplies of clean, abundant, and affordable American energy to power our nation's economy with jobs and reduce our reliance on foreign sources. While reasonable regulation is welcome, unnecessary regulation would only serve to increase the cost of energy and hinder the exploration and development efforts of the industry to develop new reserves. That concludes my comments. Thank you for having the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you very much. Al probably knows this, Representative. I just wonder what part of the state you represent.
Out in the middle of nowhere. It's a rural district out around Abilene.
Oh, my
District, District 6. Eastland is the hometown. You've been through the don't speak. Economic development.
Okay. Any other questions for Bill? Thank you guys very much. Next speakers would be Sandy Brayfield and Jay Aguilar. I may have Jay's name. Jay can tell me what the name is. Sandy, if you would like to start.
I'm Sandra Breckville. I'm the treasurer of Downwinders Risk. 15 years ago when I got involved with Downwinders, my main concern at the time was the stopping of the burning of hazardous waste in the Midlothian cement plants, take TXI cement plant in Midlothian. And I'm kind of proud to say, of course we didn't do it all on our own, but that goal was recently reached. But Downwinders has moved on in that 15 years to fighting air pollution from the whole Metroplex. So we're still at it. I just hope that 15 years from now, we're still not having to fight this fight here for cleaning up the oil and gas industry. And I'd like to, one thing I'd like to address from the ladies that were representing the natural gas lines and the Texas Railroad Commission. natural gas is a much cleaner energy source than oil or coal or anything. But as long as the drilling and production and transportation of the gas is as dirty and unregulated as it is right now, then it cannot, as far as I'm concerned, can't be considered a clean energy source. That's my comments. I just hope that the EPA will do its best to establish some good regulations to clean up this issue.
And Jay, can you pronounce your last question?
That's Olaguer. Hi, I'm Jay Olaguer. I'm the Director of Air Quality Research at the Eastern Advanced Research Center, same institution that Richard comes from. I'd like to talk about formaldehyde emissions and exposure in Barnett Shale. Okay, so why is formaldehyde important? It's a HAP. It's a probable carcinogen. It's an irritant to eye, nose, throat, and lung. And we talked also about ozone in a number of presentations. It's a very powerful ozone precursor. Specifically, it's a radical source. And this may help with Dallas-Fort Worth into ozone attainment. And my organization runs an air quality research program on behalf of the Texas Environmental Research Consortium, or TERC. We spent a lot of money looking at formaldehyde and have uncovered some very interesting things that we didn't really know about before. For instance, last year, we sponsored a major field study. We spent $3 million on it, called the Study of Houston Atmospheric Radical Precursors, or SHARP. And we conducted this in the industrial areas of the Houston region, the Houston Ship Channel, Texas City, Mont Belvieu, etc. And what we found was that combustion sources of formaldehyde may be very underestimated in the emission inventory. And when I talk about combustion sources, especially as they relate to the upstream oil and gas industry, we talk about flares and engines. Now, I need to point out that the SHARP study was done, addressed mostly the downstream sector. But we believe that the findings might actually point to some interesting issues that are relevant to the upstream sector as well. Thanks. So, what is formaldehyde exposure? How big is it typically? And what are we typically? What are the levels that we want to look at? TCQ's effects screening level for formaldehyde are, for the 1 hour case, 12 parts per billion. For the chronic case, over a year, it's 4.5 ppb. If you're looking at the cancer endpoint, and it's lower than that if you're not looking at cancer. For comparison, TCQ has an air monitoring comparison value that's less conservative than ESL, and for formaldehyde, it's 41 ppb. When we measure things in the environment, what do we see? Well, the Health Effects Institute, or HEI, gathered all the data that's available on formaldehyde exposure, and they looked at a category, in this case, urban roadside concentrations, and they noted that on the short term, the maximum 2-hour concentration that was observed in the U.S. and reported in the scientific literature is something like 17 parts per billion. In the Houston Ship Channel, where there are not only a lot of highways and freeways, but you also have a lot of refineries and olefin plants, it's very industrial. The maximum 1 hour concentration of formaldehyde that was ever recorded is 52 parts per billion. And this was with a very advanced instrument, a Hodge reaction instrument. It was built by Sandy Dasgupta of the University of Texas at Arlington, so it's local. Next. Recently there was a study released by the Barnett Shale Energy Education Council, performed by Titan Engineering. And I was just perusing the study and noticed some really, there's some interesting formaldehyde values that I had not expected. And this was at the Quicksilver Lake Arlington natural gas site. And what I've done is I pointed at the locations